What if the architecture of your mind isn't random at all? What if your thoughts, emotions, memories, even the way awareness moves through you, follow a precise, ancient design? Not metaphorically, not poetically, but geometrically. For thousands of years, across cultures that never met, humans described the same invisible patterns. They carved them into stone, painted them into temples, encoded them into myths, not because they were decorative, but because they were descriptive. These shapes weren't meant to be looked at. They were meant to be recognized. Because they weren't just mapping the universe out there. They were mapping the universe within you. And today, we're going to visualize that. Not as abstract philosophy, not as spiritual decoration, but as a living blueprint, one that quietly structures consciousness itself. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, the way you experience your own mind may never feel the same again. The blueprint of reality, ancient secrets unlocked. What if the universe isn't only expanding outward, but unfolding inward? Today, right now, you're not just watching a video. You're participating in a visualization that humans have been refining for millennia. A language older than words. A code written into nature, matter, and awareness itself. This language is known as sacred geometry. But forget the name for a moment. Because sacred geometry isn't about belief. It isn't about religion. And it isn't about mysticism in the way most people think. It's about structure. The same way DNA has structure. The same way music has structure. The same way a thought has structure before it becomes a sentence. Sacred geometry is the geometry of becoming. Ancient cultures noticed something strange. The same shapes kept appearing everywhere. In the way plants grow. In the way shells spiral. In the way stars cluster. In the proportions of the human body. And in altered states of consciousness. These weren't coincidences. They were patterns repeating across scale. Microcosm reflecting macrocosm. As above, so below. As within, so without. And here's the part most people miss. These shapes weren't just observed in nature. They were experienced internally, during meditation, during insight, during moments of deep clarity or transformation. Which raises a profound question. What if sacred geometry isn't something we invented, but something we remembered? Sacred geometry as a language of consciousness. Think about this. Your thoughts don't appear randomly. Your emotions don't shift without structure. Your memories aren't stored chaotically. There's an order beneath the surface. Neuroscience sees it as networks. Psychology sees it as archetypes. Mystics saw it as geometry. Different languages. Same underlying truth. Sacred geometry is a visual language that describes how consciousness organizes itself. It shows how awareness divides, reflects, expands, contracts, and returns to unity. And the first shape in this language, the root of it all, is shockingly simple. 2 circles, the Vesica Piscis, where consciousness is born. Imagine a single circle, a field, a whole, undivided awareness. Now imagine a second circle overlapping the first. Where they intersect, something new appears. This shape is called the Vesica Piscis. It's the womb of geometry, the birthplace of form. The first moment where unity becomes relationship. Ancient thinkers saw this shape everywhere. But what does it mean inside you? The Vesica Piscis represents the meeting point between the conscious and the subconscious, the observer and the observed, the known and the unknown. Every insight you've ever had, every aha moment, was born here. Think about it. An idea doesn't emerge from pure logic alone. It arises when two internal worlds overlap. Memory meets imagination. Emotion meets meaning. Past meets present. That overlap is creative. This is why the Vesica Piscis was associated with birth, vision, and transformation across cultures. It represents the moment awareness recognizes itself from two perspectives at once. You don't just think, you witness yourself thinking. And that witnessing is where consciousness begins to evolve. From duality to expansion, the seed of life. Now imagine this overlap repeating, circles expanding outward from that first intersection, each new circle touching the others, perfectly balanced. This pattern is known as the seed of life. It's small, elegant, and unimaginably powerful. Ancient traditions saw it as the blueprint of creation itself. But psychologically, it describes something even more intimate. The way a single realization grows into an entire worldview. One memory triggers another. One insight reshapes old beliefs. One shift in meaning reorganizes identity. Your inner world doesn't change all at once. It grows organically, layer by layer, just like this pattern. This is how thought expands. This is how healing unfolds. This is how consciousness matures. Not in straight lines, but in harmonic circles of integration. And when this pattern continues expanding, it becomes something breathtaking. The flower of life, the architecture of awareness. The flower of life emerges when the seed of life continues outward. Circles upon circles, perfectly proportioned, endlessly connected. This is one of the most recognized sacred geometric forms in human history. And for good reason. Because it doesn't just represent creation, it represents connection. Every circle intersects with others. Nothing exists in isolation. Every point influences the whole. Inside your mind, this looks like memories linked to emotions, emotions linked to beliefs, beliefs linked to identity, identity linked to perception. You are not a collection of separate thoughts. You are a patterned field of relationships. And here's something fascinating. When people enter deep meditative or altered states, many report seeing this exact pattern, not because they studied it, but because they encountered it internally, which suggests something extraordinary. The flower of life may not just be a symbol of the universe. It may be the native visual language of consciousness itself. A pause before we go deeper. Up to this point, we've explored how simple geometric forms map the birth and expansion of awareness. But we've only scratched the surface, because hidden within this flower are structures that ancient philosophers believed represented fundamental states of being, patterns that describe emotion, thought, matter, and spirit themselves. These are the Platonic solids, and once we step into them, we begin mapping consciousness not just as awareness, but as experience. The Platonic solids, archetypes of inner experience. Ancient philosophers believed that reality wasn't built from chaos, but from states. Not just physical states, but psychological ones, emotional ones, spiritual ones. Hidden within the flower of life are 5 precise, 3-dimensional forms, known as the Platonic solids. Each one is perfectly symmetrical, each face identical, each angle exact. To the ancients, this perfection wasn't aesthetic, it was diagnostic. These shapes were understood as the fundamental building blocks of experience itself, not just what the world is made of, but how consciousness moves through the world. Let's step inside them. The tetrahedron, fire and intention. The tetrahedron is the simplest 3D shape. 4 triangular faces, sharp edges, dynamic energy. Ancient traditions associated it with fire, but internally, Fire is not destruction. Fire is initiation. The tetrahedron represents moments of decision, will impulse, creative spark. Every time you feel a sudden urge to act, every time clarity strikes like lightning, you're experiencing this state. Fire consciousness is fast, focused, directional. It's the part of you that says, now. But fire alone is unstable. Which brings us to its opposite. The cube, earth and structure. The cube, also called the hexahedron, is solidity itself. 6 square faces, grounded, stable. Associated with earth, this shape represents containment and structure. Psychologically, this is the state of routine, identity, boundaries, safety. It's the part of consciousness that builds habits, organizes memory, and gives form to personality. Without the cube, intention burns out. Without structure, inspiration collapses. But too much earth, and consciousness becomes rigid, which is why awareness must breathe. The octahedron, air and balance. The octahedron looks like 2 pyramids meeting at their base. It's symmetrical, light, perfectly balanced. This shape was associated with air, and internally, air is perspective. The octahedron represents thought, reflection, communication, mental equilibrium. This is the observing mind, the part of you that can step back and say, I see what's happening. When consciousness is balanced here, clarity emerges. When it's distorted, anxiety appears. Too much air creates overthinking. Too little creates confusion. Balance is everything, and balance flows. The icosahedron, water and emotion. The icosahedron is complex and fluid, 20 triangular faces, constantly shifting light. Ancient traditions linked it to water. Internally, water is emotion. This shape represents feeling, empathy, intuition, memory flow. Emotion doesn't move in straight lines, it ripples, reflects, responds. The icosahedron shows how emotional states reshape perception, not logically, but relationally. This is why memories feel alive, why certain songs collapse time, why emotion bends identity. Water consciousness connects past and present through feeling, but emotion without coherence can overwhelm, which leads us to the most mysterious form of all, the dodecahedron, ether and awareness. Itself. The dodecahedron has 12 pentagonal faces. It was associated with ether, the invisible substance ancient thinkers believed filled space itself. But internally, ether is awareness, not thought, not emotion, not identity, but the field in which they all arise. This shape represents presence, unity, transcendence, meaning moments when you don't feel fragmented, but whole. Moments when life feels aligned, when understanding arrives without effort, when you sense there's something larger moving through you. The dodecahedron isn't a state you stay in, it's a state you touch. And those moments change everything. Consciousness in motion, the golden ratio, appears. Up to now, we've explored structure, but consciousness is not static. It moves, it grows, contracts, returns. And when ancient observers studied how growth unfolds, in shells, galaxies, plants, and the human body, they noticed something astonishing, a recurring proportion, the golden ratio, also known as phi, approximately 1.618. This ratio appears when growth happens harmoniously, not too fast, not too slow, just right. The golden ratio of awareness. When humans experience flow states, deep focus, creative immersion, meditative presence, brain waves synchronize, heart rhythms stabilize, perception becomes fluid. And guess what proportion repeatedly appears in these optimal states? Phi. This suggests something profound. Consciousness has a preferred rhythm, a natural pacing where awareness unfolds without resistance. When life feels forced, you're out of ratio. When life feels aligned, you're back in it. The golden ratio isn't a number you chase. It's a state you return to. Fractals, the infinite. Within the finite, now let's go deeper. Fractals are patterns that repeat at every scale. Zoom in, the same structure appears. Zoom out, still there. Mountains, clouds, blood vessels, neural networks. Your thoughts behave the same way. Patterns in childhood repeat in adulthood. Themes echo across relationships. Lessons revisit until integrated. This isn't failure, it's recursion. Fractals reveal that growth doesn't erase the past, it reorganizes it. Every time consciousness expands, it revisits old patterns, but from a higher perspective. This is the soul's journey, not linear progress, but spiral integration. A moment to reflect. If this is resonating, pause for a second. Think about your own life. Where do patterns repeat? Where do lessons return? Where does awareness spiral instead of move straight? You're not stuck. You're unfolding. And what comes next explains why this unfolding connects you, not just to yourself, but to the cosmos itself. Because the same geometry shaping your inner experience is shaping the universe. Connecting the cosmos. Universal patterns in personal experience. The most unsettling realization ancient thinkers ever had wasn't that the universe is vast. It was that the universe is intimate. The same geometry shaping your thoughts shapes galaxies. The same ratios guiding your emotional rhythms govern planetary motion. This isn't poetry, it's pattern. When astronomers map galactic clusters, they don't find randomness. They find filaments, cosmic webs stretching across unimaginable distances. When physicists study space-time, they don't see emptiness. They see structure, fields interacting, folding, resonating. And when mystics turned inward, they didn't find chaos. They found the same designs. This is why sacred geometry appears in star maps, temples, mandalas, and inner visions alike. Because consciousness doesn't live inside the universe. It participates in it. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. Think about this carefully. If the same geometry governs inner awareness and cosmic structure, then your internal state is not isolated. It's informational. Your attention shapes perception. Your perception shapes behavior. Your behavior shapes experience. And experience feeds back into awareness. This loop is geometric. When ancient traditions said humans are a reflection of the cosmos, they weren't flattering us. They were describing a structural truth. The universe experiences itself through pattern, and you are one of its instruments, which brings us to a phenomenon many people experience, but rarely understand. Synchronicity. When geometry aligns. Have you ever noticed moments when life seems to click? You think of someone, and they call. You ask a question, and an answer appears from nowhere. You take a step, and the path unfolds beneath you. Carl Jung called this synchronicity. But sacred geometry gives us a deeper lens. Synchronicity isn't magic, it's alignment. When your internal patterns match the larger patterns you're moving through, friction dissolves. Events don't need force, they flow. Think of it like this. When consciousness is fragmented, experience feels random. When consciousness is coherent, experience feels meaningful. Sacred geometry doesn't cause synchronicity. It reveals the conditions where it naturally occurs. Why chaos isn't the enemy. Here's an important distinction. Order doesn't eliminate chaos. It contains it. Fractals show us this beautifully. Zoom in far enough, and even the most orderly pattern becomes unpredictable. Zoom out far enough, and even chaos reveals structure. Your life works the same way. Moments of confusion aren't mistakes. They're transitional states, old patterns dissolving, before new ones stabilize. Sacred geometry teaches us not to resist these moments, but to recognize them. Because transformation doesn't happen when everything is comfortable. It happens when patterns reorganize. Practical embodiment, geometry as experience. Now let's bring this out of abstraction. How do you work with this? Not intellectually, not symbolically, but experientially. You don't need complex rituals. You need attention. Try this. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a simple circle. Not forced, just present. Feel it as a field, whole, unbroken. Now imagine a second circle overlapping it. Notice what appears between them. That space, where inner and outer meet, is awareness itself. This is why visualizing sacred geometry during meditation stabilizes the mind. You're not concentrating. You're remembering a natural structure. The mind relaxes because it recognizes home. Geometry as emotional regulation. Each geometric form corresponds to a state. When you feel scattered, air is excessive. When you feel rigid, earth dominates. When you feel overwhelmed, water floods awareness. When you feel impulsive, fire flares without balance. You don't suppress these states. You rebalance them. Visualizing grounding shapes like the cube can stabilize anxiety. Visualizing flowing patterns can soften emotional tension. Visualizing symmetry can restore mental clarity. This is not placebo. It's pattern entrainment. Consciousness responds to form because it is form-aware. The soul's journey is geometric. Ancient traditions didn't describe enlightenment as an endpoint. They described it as integration, a return to coherence. The soul's journey isn't about escaping form. It's about understanding it. You don't transcend geometry. You embody it. This is why spiritual maturity feels less dramatic than awakening narratives suggest. It feels grounded, clear, present, like things finally fitting together. Why this knowledge keeps returning. Sacred geometry disappears, then resurfaces in different cultures, different eras, different languages. Why? Because consciousness evolves in cycles. Each time humanity reaches a threshold of complexity, it rediscovers the same truth. Structure precedes meaning, and meaning follows pattern. Today, neuroscience, physics, and ancient wisdom are converging. Not because science is becoming spiritual, but because reality is revealing its architecture again. Your inner cosmos, a call to embodiment. So here we are. You began this journey wondering if your mind was chaotic. Now you've seen something else entirely. Your thoughts follow geometry. Your emotions follow geometry. Your growth follows geometry. You are not broken. You are patterned. And the more consciously you engage with these patterns, the more fluid life becomes. This isn't about control. It's about coherence. A final invitation. Before you go, I want you to reflect on one question. Where in your life do things feel forced? And where do they feel aligned? Those sensations are signals. Geometry speaking through experience. If this exploration resonated, there's more waiting for you. Deeper journeys into consciousness, ancient wisdom, and the unseen structures shaping reality. This channel isn't about answers. It's about recognition. And if something inside you felt familiar during this video, That wasn't coincidence. That was pattern recognition. Welcome back. If this video stirred something in you, let me know in the comments. What pattern did you recognize in your own life? And when you're ready, explore the next journey on the channel, because this geometry doesn't end here. It unfolds, always.